I didn't tell my mother what I actually did for a living. I didn't tell her about the crew of 23 men and women who showed up at my sites every morning with coffee from Tim Hortons and a respect I'd spent 8 years earning one blistered hand at a time. I didn't tell her about the numbered company, the general contracting license, the bonding capacity that had just cleared $4 million last spring. I let her believe what she wanted to believe, because trying to correct her had stopped being worth the bruises years ago. My name is Hannah Voss. I'm 31 years old. I live in Calgary, in a townhouse I built myself in a development I own a piece of in the Northwest, near Nose Hill Park. And on the first Tuesday of October, my mother called to tell me I wasn't welcome at Thanksgiving. She didn't put it like that, of course. My mother has never said a hard thing with a hard word in her whole life. She wrapped it in that soft, apologetic voice she uses when she's about to do something cruel and wants credit for feeling bad about it. "Sweetheart," she said, "I need to talk to you about the long weekend." I was on site in Airdrie, standing on a second-story subfloor with a clipboard in one hand and my phone pressed to my shoulder. The framers were ahead of schedule. The weather was holding. It was one of those crisp fall mornings where the sky goes that specific prairie blue you only see in Alberta in October. And I had been, up until that phone call, genuinely happy. "What's up, Mom?" "It's about your brother," she said. "Daniel is bringing Chloe to meet the family." "That's great. I've been wanting to meet her." There was a pause. A long one. I heard my mother inhale the way she does before she says something she has rehearsed in the shower. "Honey, Daniel doesn't want you there." I didn't say anything. I watched one of my carpenters, a kid named Marcus who I'd apprenticed straight out of SAIT, line up a joist and drive it home. The nail gun made a sound like a small heart attack. "It's not personal," my mother said, in a voice that was entirely personal. "Chloe's family is, well, they're very accomplished. Her father is some kind of executive at Suncor, and her mother sits on the board of the Glenbow. Daniel just wants to make a good impression, and he thinks, and I agree with him, that maybe this first meeting should be, the professionals." "The professionals?" I didn't mean it like that. "You said it like that, Mom." "Hannah, please. Your brother works very hard at the bank. He's up for VP. This is important for him. You understand, don't you?" I understood. I understood perfectly. I had understood for about 22 years, since the Christmas Daniel got a chemistry set from our grandparents and I got a Fisher-Price kitchen, despite the fact that Daniel had never cooked anything in his life, and I had been disassembling the toaster since I was 4. I understood when my father sat me down in grade 12 and explained that the family could only really afford to send one kid to university the proper way, and it made more sense for it to be my brother, because I was always going to be fine, I was resourceful, I could figure things out. I understood when I got my red seal in carpentry at 23, and my mother introduced me at her church group as still finding her way. I understood when I started my own contracting company at 26, and she told her sister I was doing handyman work. I understood, Mom. I'd been understanding my whole life. "What should I tell Chloe if she asks about me?" I said. "Oh, I don't think she will. Daniel said he told her he has a younger sister, but she travels a lot. For work." So I was being edited out, scrubbed from the story like a typo. My brother was going to sit at our mother's dining room table in Okotoks and pretend, for the benefit of this woman, whose approval he apparently needed, that he was an only child. "I understand," I said. "I knew you would, sweetheart. You've always been so mature about these things." I hung up. I stood there on the subfloor for a minute, with the wind coming in through the open framing, and then Marcus called up to me asking about the header for the kitchen pass-through, and I went back to work, because that's what I do. That's what I've always done. I didn't cry. I want to be clear about that. I didn't cry that day, or the next, or the day after that. I'd done my crying about my family a long time ago, in the parking lot of my apprenticeship school at 19, when my father told me over the phone that he wasn't coming to my first-year ceremony because Daniel had a hockey thing. I'd cried myself out. What was left was something quieter. Something that had been compressed, year after year, into a kind of diamond. I went home that night to my townhouse. I poured myself a glass of the Okanagan Pinot I keep for Fridays. I sat on my back deck and looked at the mountains in the distance, pink and gold in the last light, and I thought about my grandfather. My grandfather was a framer. He came over from the Netherlands in 1954 with a hammer in his toolbox and about 40 words of English, and he built houses in Calgary from the time Elvis was on the radio until the year before he died. He was the one who put a hammer in my hand when I was 6. He was the one who told me, in that gravelly accent he never fully lost, that a person who could build a house could always feed their family. He was the only one in our family who came to my Red Seal ceremony. My mother said she had a migraine. My father had a golf tournament. Daniel was in Toronto for work. My grandfather sat in the front row with a bouquet of grocery store flowers, and when they called my name, he cried. He was 86 years old, and he cried like a child, and afterwards he gave me his tape measure. The old Stanley one, he'd carried since the 70s. I still have it. I used it that morning, actually, on the Airdrie site. He died the next spring. He left me his tools, and $47,000 in a savings account I hadn't known existed. There was a note, in his shaky old man handwriting. It said, "Build something. Love, Opa." I used the money as seed capital for my first flip, a 1,962 bungalow in Bowness, stripped to the studs and rebuilt. I sold it 9 months later for $180,000 over what I'd put into it. That was the start. 5 years later, I had Voss Construction Group, with 3 crews running simultaneously, a permanent office in Quarry Park, a bookkeeper, a project manager, and enough of a reputation that clients were calling me 6 months before they broke ground. My mother knew none of this. She thought I was still swinging a hammer on other people's jobs. Every time I tried to tell her, back in the early days, her eyes would glaze over and she'd change the subject to Daniel's latest promotion. Eventually, I stopped trying. The Sunday after my mother's phone call, she called again. She wanted to know if I was okay with everything, which is my mother's way of confirming that I wasn't going to make a scene. I told her I was fine. I told her I'd be working through the weekend anyway. I told her to tell Daniel. I said hello. I did not tell her that on Monday morning, I had a meeting with a woman named Chloe Bergman, the junior partner at a design firm out of Vancouver that had just been subcontracted to do the interior finishes on my biggest project of the year. A 34-unit luxury infill in Mount Royal. $16 million. The kind of build that puts your company on the cover of Western Living. I didn't know it was the same Chloe. How could I? It's not like my brother had ever introduced her to me. I'd gotten the email through the design firm, CC'd to my project manager, and I'd barely noted the name. Monday morning, 10 a.m. She walked into my boardroom in Quarry Park. She was beautiful, in that polished Vancouver way, all cashmere and architectural glasses. She had a leather portfolio under one arm and a sample case in the other. She smiled at me with that professional warmth designers do, and she said, "Hannah? Lovely to meet you. Chloe Bergman, from Vestal Interiors." I shook her hand. I did not place the name. Bergman is a common enough German surname on the prairies and the coast. It didn't occur to me for a second that this could be the same woman. My brother had never sent me so much as a photo of his girlfriend. We sat down. We spent 90 minutes going through her mood boards for the Mount Royal units. She was good, genuinely good. Her eye for proportion was the kind of thing you can't teach at design school. We argued productively about cabinet hardware and baseboards, and by the end of the meeting, I'd come to the conclusion that Vestal was going to be a real asset to the project. I told her so. I walked her out to the lobby, and we shook hands again, and I said, "I'm looking forward to working with you, Chloe." She said, "Likewise." And then she paused, at the door, and tilted her head, and said, "Voss. That's an unusual name. Are you any relation to a Daniel Voss? He works at RBC, in the downtown branch?" My stomach did a slow, complicated thing. "He's my brother," I said. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. "Oh," she said. "Oh," I agreed. There was a long, silent moment in my lobby. while a receptionist pretended not to listen, and my logo on the wall behind us, spelled out in brushed steel, the name Daniel had been trying to scrub from his fiancée's history. He never, Chloe said, and stopped. She tried again. He told me you were a contractor. I am a contractor. I mean, he said. He said you did renovations in people's houses. I did, for a while. Now I do this. I gestured around. At the office. At the corner of Mount Royal visible through the window, where my crane was going up that week. At the $16 million project that was, in a very literal sense, going to have her name on the invoices. Hannah, she said slowly. Is your family planning something for this weekend? The long weekend? Thanksgiving dinner at my mother's. In Okotoks. And you'll be there. I won't. I wasn't invited. Chloe Bergman, of Vestal Interiors, who had 5 minutes earlier been entirely professional, sat down abruptly on the leather bench in my lobby. I have to go, she said. I have to make a phone call. You absolutely do, I said. She left. I went back to my office. I closed the door, and I sat at my desk, and I looked at the photo on my wall, the one of my grandfather and me at my Red Seal ceremony, both of us in cheap suits, his arm around my shoulders. And I laughed. I laughed for about 3 minutes, until my project manager came in to ask what was so funny, and I said, you wouldn't believe me. I had not planned this. I want to be very clear about that too. I had not engineered any of it. I had simply, for the first time in my adult life, let the universe notice what my family had been doing, and the universe had apparently had opinions. Chloe called me that afternoon. She asked if we could meet for coffee, off the books, not about the project. I suggested Phil and Sebastian on 4th Street. She was there before I was, with 2 Americanos already ordered. I didn't know, she said, the second I sat down. I want you to understand that. I had no idea. I believe you. He told me his sister did, quote, some kind of handiwork. That you lived in, a place with roommates. He said you were going through a hard time, and the family thought it would be best if I met everyone else first, and then you later. Once things, quote, settled down. I drank my coffee. I didn't say anything. Hannah, she said. I'm so sorry. It's not your apology to make. No. How much of this is you not fitting some picture they want? And how much of this is, I don't know, something you did? It was a fair question. I respected her for asking it. I left university after 1 semester, I said. I got my Red Seal in carpentry at 23. I built a business. I don't drink. I don't do drugs. I've never been arrested. I pay my taxes. I volunteer at Habitat 4 weekends a year. My grandfather left me some money when he died, and I multiplied it by a number I'm not going to tell you. That's it. That's my crime. I didn't become what my mother wanted me to become. Chloe put her glasses back on. What did she want you to become? A lawyer. Then, when that didn't happen, a teacher. Then, when that didn't happen, my brother's +1. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, would it be all right with you if I came out to the Mount Royal site later this week? I'd like to see it. Of course. And, Hannah, I'd like you to come to Thanksgiving. Chloe, I wasn't. I know you weren't, but I'm asking you. As the person who is, apparently, planning to marry your brother. I'd like you to be there. I thought about it. I thought about it all the way home that night, and into the next morning, and on site that afternoon, and when I went to bed that night I still hadn't made up my mind. What decided it, finally, was my grandfather's tape measure. I keep it on my desk at home, next to a photo of his old work truck. I picked it up that Friday morning, and I felt the weight of it, and I heard him in my head, that thick accent, that quiet voice that had always told me the same thing. You don't hide from people, Hannah. Let them see what you are. If they look away, that's about them. So I went. Saturday afternoon, I got in my truck, a year-old F-150. I'd paid cash for, and I drove down to Okotoks. I wore a navy dress. I brought a bottle of wine that cost more than my mother's whole bar cart. I did not call ahead. My mother opened the door, and her face did a thing I will remember until I die. A little flare of horror, instantly smoothed into social politeness, instantly undercut by a glance over her shoulder at the living room, where I could hear my brother's voice, and my father's, and a woman's laugh I did not yet recognize. "Hannah," she said. "Sweetheart, what are you?" "Chloe invited me," I said, and I walked past her into my parents' house. The living room went silent. My brother Daniel was standing by the fireplace in a navy blazer, holding a glass of wine. My father was in his recliner, and on the couch, sitting beside an empty cushion, was Chloe Bergman, who saw me and stood up and walked across the room and hugged me. "I'm so glad you came," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. My brother went the color of raw drywall. "Chloe," he said. "Honey, you know Hannah?" "We've met," Chloe said lightly, and she took my arm like we'd been friends for years. And she walked me over to the couch, and she sat me down in what was clearly her seat, and she sat on the arm beside me. "Hannah and I are actually working together. On the Mount Royal project. You remember, the one I told you about last week, the $16 million infill." Daniel's glass rattled against the mantelpiece. "You're working with Hannah." "Hannah is my client." "Well, Voss Construction Group is my client, which Hannah owns." My mother sat down hard on the ottoman. "I'm sorry," my father said, finally, from the recliner. "Hannah owns what?" "Dad," Daniel said. "Dad, let's not." "Voss Construction Group," Chloe said. Kindly and clearly, the way you might explain a simple thing to a child. "Hannah is the founder and president. They're one of the top residential contractors in Calgary. Last year's gross revenue was..." "Hannah, am I allowed to say?" "I don't care," I said. "Around 7 million, Chloe said. "Which I only know because I had to pull their financials before Vestal signed on. My firm's protocols." My mother made a small sound like a tea kettle just starting to think about boiling. $7 million, my father said. "Gross," Chloe said. "Net is quite a bit less, obviously, but Hannah's a majority shareholder, so..." Daniel set his wine glass down very carefully on the mantel. He looked like a man watching his own house burn from the inside. "Hannah," my mother said. "Hannah, sweetheart. Why didn't you..." "I did, Mom. I told you about getting my red seal. I told you when I started the company. I told you when we moved into the Quarry Park office. I told you last Christmas, when you asked what I'd been up to, and I said I was building a 34-unit project in Mount Royal. Do you remember what you said?" My mother did not remember what she said. "You said, 'That's nice, dear. Can you pass the cranberries? Your brother is telling a story about work.'" The dining room, in the next room, was silent. The turkey was on the table, uncarved. The candles were burning. My mother had set 6 places, not 7. "I understand," I said, "why you didn't set a place for me. I wasn't invited. I'm not here to eat your food. I came because Chloe asked me to come, and I came because I wanted, for once in my life, to stand in this room as myself, and have you see me." "Hannah," my father began. "Dad, you didn't come to my ceremony. I waited for you, in the lobby, for an hour, because I thought maybe you were just running late. You went golfing. That was 13 years ago." "Yes. I've been counting." Daniel turned around from the mantel. "I'll give him this." He looked me in the eye when he said it. "I was embarrassed of you," he said. "I admit it. I didn't want Chloe to meet you until we were further along. I thought, if she sees, you know, the clothes, the truck, the whatever, she'd think our family was..." "The clothes," I said. "The work clothes. You wear work clothes everywhere, Hannah. You show up to Easter dinner in boots." "I come straight from the site, Daniel. Because I work Saturdays. Because that's how I afford the townhouse I live in, alone, which I built. Which is worth more than your condo. Which I will, for the record, never take a cent of family money to maintain, because there was never any to take." He didn't answer. "I'm sorry," Chloe said, into the silence. She was not looking at me. She was looking at Daniel. "I think we have a lot to talk about. You and I." "Chloe." Not now. Not here. But soon. She stood up. She took my arm again. She said to my mother, "Mrs. Voss, thank you for the invitation. The turkey smells wonderful. I hope you enjoy it. I think Hannah and I are going to go." My mother said, "Please don't," and didn't finish. We left. Chloe and I walked out to my truck, and she got in the passenger side, and we drove back to Calgary, in a silence that was almost peaceful. About halfway up the QEII, she said, "You were extremely kind in there." I wasn't kind. You were. You could have said a great deal more than you did. I saw you not say it. I didn't answer. "Hannah," she said, "near Okotoks Road. I don't know what I'm going to do about your brother. I need to think. You don't owe me any information. I know. I'm saying it out loud, so I can hear it." I dropped her at her hotel downtown. She squeezed my arm before she got out. She said, "I'll see you Tuesday. On the site." Tuesday. I drove home. I sat on my deck again. I poured another glass of the Okanagan Pinot. And for the first time in about a week, I let myself feel the whole weight of it. Not rage. Not vindication. Just grief, I think. For the family I had wanted, and had never, ever been going to have. My grandfather's tape measure sat on the table beside me. I picked it up. I extended it a few inches, the way he used to do absently when he was thinking. The old metal blade was still rigid, still true, after 50 years of use. My mother called me the next day, and the day after, and the day after. I did not answer. She left voicemails that got progressively more unraveled. The first one was measured. The second one was apologetic. The third one cried. By the fifth one, she was pleading, talking about family, talking about moving past this, talking about how much she loved me, talking about how, of course, she was proud of what I'd accomplished. She just hadn't quite understood the scale of it. I didn't call back. My father sent a single email. It said, "Hannah, I think we may owe you an apology. Would you like to have coffee sometime, Dad?" I thought about that one for a long time. 3 weeks, actually. Then I wrote back. I said, "Dad, I think you do too. But I'm not ready yet. When I am, I'll let you know." He wrote back the same day. 2 words. "I understand." Daniel did not contact me. Chloe did. She came by the Mount Royal site the following Tuesday, and the one after that, and every Tuesday for the next 4 months. She was extremely good at her job. We built something beautiful together. In February, she took me out for dinner at Rouge in Inglewood, and she told me, over the appetizer, that she had ended her engagement to my brother at the end of October. "It wasn't because of you," she said. "I want you to know that. It was because of who he was in that room. I'd seen glimpses of it before. I'd told myself I was imagining it. That Thanksgiving, I couldn't tell myself anymore. I'm sorry, Chloe. Don't be. You did me the best favor of my adult life." She raised her glass. I raised mine. "To your grandfather," she said. "You told me about him, once, on the site. I liked the sound of him." "To my grandfather," I said. We clinked glasses. I thought about him. I thought about the tape measure on my desk at home, and the $47,000, and the note that said build something. I still was. I would keep doing it, every day, for the rest of my life. That's the thing my mother never understood, and my brother couldn't afford to see. A person who knows how to build a house doesn't need anyone's permission to have a home. You put up the walls, you make sure they're plumb, you finish the corners, you open the door. And if the people you came from can't walk through it, that's not your framing that's wrong. That's theirs. I still have the tape measure. I use it every day. I probably always will.